Welcome back, my lovely friends, and thank you for being here today. Dears, if you've ever looked at the loose change in your pocket and wondered whether one small coin could hold a story far greater than its face value, then today's journey is going to captivate you. We're about to explore one of the most fascinating chapters in modern American coinage, a story that begins with a simple quarter and unfolds into a world of mystery, historical change, rare mistakes, and astonishing possibilities. Today, we're talking about the 1965 United States quarter dollar, a coin that officially represents just 25 cents, yet has become the center of extraordinary discussions about value, rarity, and what happens when history, error, and imagination collide. The year 1965 stands as a turning point in American monetary history. It was a moment of transformation, tension, and urgency within the United States Mint. Rising silver prices had created a crisis. For decades, U.S. quarters had been struck in 90% silver, but by the early 1960s, the metal inside those coins was becoming more valuable than the denomination stamped on them. People began hoarding silver coins, removing them from circulation, and the nation faced the real possibility of a coin shortage. The government had to act, and it acted decisively. In 1965, the United States officially transitioned quarters from silver to a copper-nickel-clad composition. On paper, this sounds like a simple change, but in reality, it was a massive logistical challenge. Old silver planchets still existed. New clad planchets were being introduced. Dies were prepared without mint marks to discourage hoarding. Production was pushed at extraordinary speed to meet public demand. In this environment, the conditions were perfect for mistakes to occur. The 1965 quarter was struck without a mint mark, regardless of whether it was produced in Philadelphia or Denver, making it unique among many U.S. coins. This decision alone has fueled decades of confusion, speculation, and fascination among collectors. When a coin lacks a mint mark during a time of transition, it opens the door to endless questions. Where was it struck? On what planchet? Using which dies? Under what conditions? At face value, a 1965 quarter is worth exactly 25 cents. Millions were produced, and most examples are common, worn, and unremarkable. But collectors know that value is not determined by the average coin. It is determined by the exceptions. And in 1965, exceptions were not only possible, they were likely. One of the most legendary possibilities surrounding the 1965 quarter involves silver planchets. During the transition year, leftover silver blanks from 1964 were still present in mint facilities. If even a small number of these silver planchets were accidentally struck with 1965 quarter dies, those coins would instantly become extraordinary. A genuine 1965 quarter struck on a 90% silver planchet would defy official mint records and represent a physical contradiction to stated policy. Such a coin would not merely be rare. It would be historic. It would represent a mistake that slipped through during one of the most carefully watched transitions in U.S. coinage history. The existence of even one confirmed example would send shockwaves through the numismatic community, and its value would be driven not just by rarity, but by its challenge to established understanding. But silver composition alone is only one layer of possibility. The real fascination begins when collectors imagine multiple errors existing on a single coin. A hypothetical 1965 quarter struck on silver, combined with other striking anomalies, enters a realm of valuation that goes far beyond normal market behavior. Consider the possibility of a double strike. If a silver planchet was struck once, failed to eject properly, and then struck again slightly off-center, the resulting coin would display overlapping designs, distortion, and movement frozen in metal. This kind of error reveals the physical chaos of the minting process and transforms the coin into a visual narrative of mechanical failure. Off-center strikes themselves are another source of fascination. When a planchet is not properly aligned between the dies, part of the design may be missing entirely, while other areas are sharply detailed. The more dramatic the off-center strike, the more desirable it becomes to collectors, especially when the date remains visible. Die errors add yet another dimension. Cracked dies, chipped dies, and broken dies can create raised lines, missing details, or large distorted areas on the coin. A severe die break can produce a cud, an irregular raised mass where part of the die has broken away. Coins struck during this brief window before the die was replaced are inherently limited in number. Then there are struck-through errors, where foreign material interferes with the strike. Grease, cloth, metal fragments, or other debris. My dear history lovers, now, we're diving into a fascinating and thought-provoking story that starts with something incredibly ordinary and ends in a world of extraordinary possibilities. We're talking about the Liberty Associated United States $quarter dated 1980 with the P Mint mark, a coin that officially represents just 25 cents, yet has inspired discussions, theories, and legends suggesting values that stretch into the hundreds of millions of dollars when the rarest errors, mistakes, and mint anomalies are imagined together. At first glance, the 1980 P quarter seems like one of the most unremarkable coins in modern American history. It belongs to the Washington Quarter series, a design that had already been familiar to Americans for decades by 1980. Millions of these coins flowed effortlessly into circulation, passing through cash registers, vending machines, and pockets across the country. Most people never looked at them twice. Yet beneath that familiarity lies a deeper story, one rooted in the complexity of minting, the realities of large-scale production, and the simple truth that no industrial process, no matter how advanced, is ever completely perfect. By 1980, the United States Mint was firmly in the post-silver era for circulating quarters. Since 1965, quarters had been struck in a copper-nickel-clad composition rather than precious metal. This change solved the silver hoarding crisis, but it also introduced new technical challenges. Clad coinage requires precise bonding between metal layers, exact tolerances in thickness and weight, and consistent striking pressure to bring out design details properly. Every step in this process created opportunities for error, and while most mistakes were caught and destroyed, a very small number inevitably escaped. The Philadelphia Mint, represented by the P Mint mark on the 1980 quarter, produced an enormous quantity of coins that year. High production numbers might seem to suggest low collectible value, but experienced collectors know that volume and rarity are not opposites. In fact, massive production can increase the chance that unusual errors occur, simply because more coins are being made under constant mechanical stress. The difference between face value and extraordinary theoretical value begins with understanding what collectors mean by an error. An error coin is not simply worn or damaged after leaving the mint. It is a coin that was incorrectly made at the mint itself. These mistakes become permanent features of the coin, frozen into the metal during striking. Each error tells a story about a moment when something went wrong, and those stories are what drive fascination and value. One of the most discussed possibilities for high-value modern quarters involves off-metal strikes. A quarter is supposed to be struck on a specific type of clad planchet, but imagine a scenario where a planchet intended for a different denomination, or even for a foreign coin, ended up in the quarter press. If a 1980p quarter were struck on an incorrect planchet, the resulting coin would immediately stand out by weight, thickness, color, or sound. Such errors are rare, and when confirmed, they can command extraordinary prices. Another intriguing possibility lies in improper clad bonding. A clad quarter is made of multiple metal layers bonded together. If this bonding fails partially or completely, the coin may show peeling layers, exposed copper cores, or missing outer layers. These errors reveal the hidden structure of the coin and are highly sought after because they expose something the public was never meant to see. Double strikes and multiple strikes add another layer of intrigue. If a planchet fails to eject properly after the first strike, it may be struck again. Depending on how it moves between strikes, the second impression can overlap, rotate, or distort the original design. Dramatic double strikes are visual proof of mechanical malfunction, and no two are exactly alike. A bold, well-defined multiple strike on a 1980p quarter would be instantly recognizable and highly desirable. Misaligned dies are another source of fascination. When the obverse and reverse dies are not properly aligned, the resulting coin may show significant rotation between sides. Collectors measure this rotation, and extreme examples are especially prized. A quarter with a dramatic rotational error challenges our expectations of symmetry and precision in modern coinage. Die cracks, chips, and breaks further expand the range of possibilities. Dies are made of hardened steel, but they wear out under the immense pressure of repeated strikes. Cracks can form, transferring raised lines onto coins. Chips can break away, removing parts of the design and creating unusual shapes. In severe cases, large portions of the die can fail, resulting in massive distortions known as cuds. Coins struck during these moments are inherently limited in number, because damaged dies are Q. My dears, now, I'm truly glad you're here, because what we're about to explore is one of those stories that can completely change the way you look at the loose change in your pocket. Today's third journey begins with a coin that almost everyone has handled countless times without a second thought, a simple $quarter, and slowly unfolds into a world filled with rare mistakes, hidden possibilities, collector obsession, and astonishing theoretical values. We're talking about the Liberty-associated United States $quarter dated 1988 with the P Mint mark, a coin with a face value of just 25 cents, yet one that has inspired discussions and legends suggesting values reaching as high as $222.7 million when the most extreme error possibilities are imagined together. At first glance, the 1988 P quarter looks completely ordinary. It carries the familiar portrait of George Washington, a design that had been part of American life for generations by the late 1980s. Millions of these coins were struck, released into circulation, and used daily in grocery stores, parking meters, and vending machines. For most people, this quarter was nothing more than a tool for everyday transactions. Yet for collectors and error specialists, the year 1988 represents a period when modern minting technology was advanced, but not flawless, and that distinction is where the story truly begins. By 1988, the United States Mint had been producing copper nickel-clad quarters for over 2 decades. The transition away from silver in 1965 had reshaped American coinage, introducing layered metal planchets that required precise bonding and consistent striking pressure. These modern processes were efficient and reliable, but they were also complex. Every stage of production, from blank preparation to die installation and high-speed striking, created opportunities for subtle or dramatic mistakes. The Philadelphia Mint, identified by the P Mint mark, produced a vast number of quarters in 1988. High output was necessary to meet the needs of a growing economy, but high speed and volume also placed immense stress on machinery, dies, and quality control systems. When presses run continuously for long hours, tiny deviations can compound into visible errors. Most of these mistakes are caught during inspection, but a small number inevitably escape into circulation. The difference between a common quarter and one discussed in extraordinary value terms begins with understanding what collectors mean by errors and mistakes. These are not scratches, dents, or damage caused after a coin leaves the mint. True errors are born during the minting process itself. They are permanent, unintentional features embedded into the coin at the moment of creation, and they cannot be replicated exactly. One of the most intriguing error possibilities for a 1988 P quarter involves off-metal strikes. A quarter is intended to be struck on a specific copper nickel-clad planchet. However, in rare cases, planchets intended for other denominations, foreign coins, or experimental purposes can find their way into the wrong press. If a 1988 quarter were struck on an incorrect planchet, the result would be a coin with the wrong weight, thickness, or color. Such an error would immediately stand out to a knowledgeable collector. Improper clad bonding errors add another layer of fascination. A clad coin is composed of multiple metal layers fused together under heat and pressure. If this bonding fails partially or completely, the coin may show exposed copper cores, peeling layers, or missing outer layers. These errors reveal the internal structure of the coin, turning it into a kind of accidental cross-section of modern coinage. Double strikes and multiple strikes are among the most visually dramatic errors collectors seek. These occur when a planchet fails to eject properly after being struck and is struck again. Depending on how the coin moves between strikes, the second impression may overlap the first, rotate, or distort the design. A bold, well-defined multiple strike on a 1988 P quarter would transform it from an everyday object into a unique artifact of mechanical failure. Misaligned dies introduce yet another possibility. When the obverse and reverse dies are not properly aligned, the resulting coin may display a significant rotational error. Collectors measure these rotations, and extreme examples are especially prized. A quarter with a dramatic rotation challenges the expectation of precision in modern coinage. Die cracks, chips, and breaks further expand the range of potential errors. Dies are subjected to immense pressure and eventually wear out. Cracks can form, transferring raised lines onto coins. Chips can break away, removing parts of the design. In severe cases, large portions of the die can fail, creating dramatic distortions known as cuds. Coins struck during these moments are inherently limited, because damaged d. My dear friends, if you love American coins, hidden history, unbelievable values, and stories that turn ordinary pocket change into legends worth unimaginable sums of money, then you are in exactly the right place. Now, we are diving deep into a United States coin that almost everyone has seen, many have spent without a second thought, and yet very few truly understand. This is the Liberty $1/4 1990p, a coin with a face value of just 25 cents, but one that under extremely rare circumstances has been linked to an astonishing theoretical worth reaching as high as $218.5 million. That difference between its humble face value and its extraordinary potential value is not magic, not luck alone, but a fascinating combination of history, human error, minting mistakes, and the strange realities of collector demand. At first glance, the 1990p Liberty quarter looks like any other Washington quarter of the modern era. Millions were struck, circulated, stacked in bank rolls, dropped into parking meters, and lost in couch cushions across America. It does not shine like gold, it does not feel heavy like silver coins of earlier decades, and it does not announce its importance to the casual observer. Yet within this ordinary appearance lies the possibility of extraordinary rarity. The story of this coin is not about what it was meant to be, but about what it accidentally became during the minting process, and how those accidents transformed a common object into one of the most talked about hypothetical treasures in modern numismatics. The year 1990 sits at an interesting point in United States coinage history. The nation had fully transitioned away from precious metal circulating coins decades earlier, relying on copper-nickel-clad compositions for quarters. The Philadelphia Mint, identified by the absence of a mint mark or by the P designation in records, was producing massive quantities of coins to meet everyday demand. Speed, efficiency, and volume were the priorities. And whenever speed and volume dominate a process involving heavy machinery, human oversight, and mechanical precision, the door opens for mistakes. Those mistakes, under the right conditions, are exactly what collectors search for. The Liberty quarter, often referred to as the Washington quarter though deeply associated with the broader concept of liberty in American symbolism, carries a design that most people recognize instantly. George Washington's profile appears on the obverse, representing leadership, independence, and national identity. The reverse shows the eagle, wings spread, clutching arrows and olive branches, symbolizing strength and peace. This design had already been in use for decades by 1990, which ironically increased the likelihood of errors going unnoticed. When a design becomes familiar, the human eye stops questioning it. Subtle differences slip through quality control. Dies wear out. Alignment drifts. Metal blanks behave unpredictably under pressure. One of the most important factors behind the extraordinary valuation associated with certain 1990p quarters is the concept of error rarity layered on top of mass production. Not all errors are equal. Many mistakes occur and are caught early. Others are minor and common. But a tiny fraction escape detection, survive circulation, and possess characteristics so unique that no known duplicates exist. It is within this realm that values can explode beyond rational expectations. When a single coin becomes the only known example of a specific catastrophic minting error, it stops being currency and becomes a singular artifact. Among the most discussed possibilities are extreme die errors. A die is the hardened steel tool used to strike the design onto blank planchets. Over time, dies crack, clash, shift, or are improperly prepared. In rare circumstances, a die intended for a different denomination or a different year can be mismatched. If a 1990 quarter were struck using a die with incorrect design elements, misaligned impressions, or remnants of previous hub designs, the result could be a coin that technically should not exist. Collectors are obsessed with coins that should not exist. Another category that drives astronomical theoretical valuations is off-metal strikes. This occurs when a coin is struck on a planchet intended for another denomination or even another country. A 1990p quarter struck on a silver planchet, a foreign blank, or a transitional metal composition would immediately stand apart from millions of normal quarters. If such a coin also exhibited additional errors such as double strikes, misalignment, or partial impressions, its uniqueness would compound. Rarity does not add value linearly. It multiplies it. Mint mark anomalies are another critical factor, even though the Philadelphia Mint traditionally did not place a P mint mark on quarters during earlier periods. Any presence, absence, or ghost impression o. My dear viewers, now in the last history of this video, we are exploring one of the most astonishing possibilities in modern American coin collecting, the Liberty $1/4 1997 D, a coin with a simple face value of just 25 cents, yet one that under extraordinary and extremely rare circumstances has been associated with a mind-bending theoretical worth of $211.4 million. This is not a story about fantasy, and it is not about ordinary coins. It is a story about mistakes, human error, mechanical failure, and how the smallest deviations at the mint can create objects so rare that their value becomes almost impossible to comprehend. At first glance, the 1997 D quarter looks exactly like millions of others struck that year. It carries the familiar image of George Washington on the front, calm and dignified, a symbol of leadership and liberty recognized across the world. The reverse displays the powerful eagle, wings spread, clutching arrows and olive branches, representing strength and peace balanced together. This design had been in circulation for decades by 1997, so familiar that most people never paused to truly examine it. That familiarity is precisely what allowed some of the most extraordinary mint errors to pass unnoticed, slipping quietly into circulation where they could remain hidden for years or even decades. The year 1997 was a transitional moment in American coinage history. The United States Mint was preparing for the launch of the State Quarters program, a massive redesign that would begin just 2 years later. Production was intense, machinery was running constantly, and pressure to meet demand was relentless. The Denver Mint, identified by the D Mint mark, was responsible for striking hundreds of millions of quarters that year. When output reaches that scale, perfection becomes statistically impossible. Somewhere within that ocean of coins, anomalies emerge. Most are minor. A tiny fraction are spectacular. An even smaller fraction are so extreme that they redefine what collectors believe is possible. The value attributed to the 1997 D quarter at the level of $211.4 million is not tied to ordinary examples. It exists at the far edge of possibility, where rarity meets uniqueness. This value represents a hypothetical scenario involving a coin that combines multiple major mint errors, each one rare on its own, but almost unheard of when found together on a single piece. Collectors do not simply pay for metal and design. They pay for impossibility. They pay for the idea that something exists which should never have existed at all. One of the most powerful contributors to this extraordinary valuation is the concept of catastrophic minting errors. These are not small imperfections. They are fundamental failures in the coin production process. A dramatic example would be a 1997 D quarter struck on a planchet intended for a completely different denomination or even a different country. If a quarter were accidentally struck on a silver blank, a foreign alloy, or a transitional metal composition never intended for circulation, the result would be an object that defies official records. Such a coin would instantly become a focal point of numismatic study. Another possibility involves double denomination strikes, where a coin is struck more than once by different dies. Imagine a quarter that carries ghosted elements of another denomination beneath its design, faint but unmistakable. This would indicate that the coin passed through the press multiple times, an error so rare that most collectors will never encounter one in their lifetime. If such a coin also carried the 1997 D Mint mark, clearly visible and verifiable, its uniqueness would multiply. Mint mark errors themselves play a crucial role in driving extraordinary values. The D Mint mark on a 1997 quarter indicates production at the Denver Mint. Any irregularity involving this mark immediately raises red flags. A doubled mint mark, a repunched mint mark, a tilted mint mark, or even traces of a mint mark where it should not exist could signal die manipulation or mechanical malfunction. If evidence suggested that the mint mark was accidentally applied multiple times or in an incorrect position, the coin would become a mystery demanding explanation. There are also errors that occur long before a coin ever reaches the press. Die preparation errors can create coins with doubled or distorted designs that are baked into the metal itself. A double die quarter from 1997 D could show strong separation in Washington's facial features, lettering, or date. These are not strike errors but creation errors, meaning every coin struck from that die would carry the flaw until the die was replaced. If only a small number were struck before discovery, surviving examples would be intensely sought after. Planchet errors are another critical area of interest. A planchet that is too thin,